You wake up, and for a fleeting moment there is silence. Then the noise rushes in. The notifications, the mental list of things you didn't do yesterday, the weight of 1,000 small obligations pressing down on your chest. And in that soft, fragile space between sleep and consciousness, you make a promise to yourself. Today will be different. Today, you will seize the reins. But by noon, the current has swept you away again, and you are left wondering why you are perpetually fighting a tide you never chose. Carl Jung saw this not as a failure of will, but as the symptom of a deeper script running beneath the surface of your life. He warned us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The chaos you wake up to isn't a random intruder. It is a carefully constructed fortress, built by a part of you that is terrified of what might happen if things actually fell into place. The mess on your desk, the overflowing calendar, the constant feeling of being behind. This is not a logistical problem. It is a psychological shield. It is the smokescreen you hide behind to avoid the one conversation you need to have, the project that scares you because it matters too much, the version of yourself that you have outgrown but refuse to bury. We mistake this chaos for circumstance. We blame time or other people or a lack of discipline. But the structure of your outer world is always a perfect reflection of your inner world. If your life feels fragmented, it is because the psyche that is building it is fragmented. Jung would ask you a question that cuts through the noise. What part of you needs this disorder to survive? What phantom in your shadow feeds on the confusion? Because in the clarity of an organized life, it would have nowhere to hide. Think about it. If you continued living exactly as you are today, making the same choices, avoiding the same fears, for the next 5 years, who would you become? Not who you hope to become, but who the trajectory of your current actions is building. That image, the one that just flashed in your mind, that is your future knocking on the door. And it is in that uncomfortable pause, in that moment of brutal self-reflection, that the possibility of real change is born. Not from a new app, not from a better to-do list, but from the courage to look at the architect of the chaos itself. Chapter 1. The Architecture of Avoidance. Chaos is rarely what it appears to be. We look at a disorganized life and see a series of accidents, a string of bad luck, a lack of time. We see the leaves scattered by the wind and curse the wind, never looking down to see the roots of the tree are rotten. Jungian psychology suggests that chaos is not a void where order is missing, but a positive structure, a deliberate creation of the psyche. It is a wall built by the ego to keep you contained within a territory you have already mastered, even if that territory is a prison. Think of the shadow not as a monster, but as a guardian. Its job is to protect you from pain. It learned long ago that visibility is dangerous. If you actually organized your life, if you cleared the decks and focused your energy, you would have to face the thing you are avoiding. So it creates a smokescreen. A cluttered room gives you a perfect excuse. I can't start my novel until my office is clean. A fragmented schedule gives you the alibi of being too busy to have that difficult talk with your partner. A never-ending to-do list gives you the illusion of motion while you are standing perfectly still. Have you ever sat down to do the one thing that truly matters, only to find yourself, 10 minutes later, alphabetizing your bookshelf or deep cleaning a kitchen drawer you haven't opened in years? We call this procrastination. We call it laziness. But it is neither. It is a sophisticated defense mechanism. Your unconscious mind knows that if you write that chapter, you might fail. If you make that call, you might be rejected. If you start that business, you might be exposed as a fraud. So it throws 1,000 small, manageable tasks in your path. It keeps you busy, so you don't have to become brave. Jung observed that the most dangerous things we avoid don't disappear. They sink into the basement of the mind, and from down there, they pull the strings. They become the reason you feel inexplicably tired at 3 p.m., the reason you snap at your family, the reason you feel a low-grade sense of dread for no apparent reason. External chaos is just the map of that internal terrain. We don't live in disarray because we are incompetent. We live in disarray because the shadow has negotiated a peace treaty with the ego. Stay small, stay hidden, and I will keep you safe from the pain of truly living. This brings us to an uncomfortable truth about identity. We think of ourselves as the hero of our story, but we are often just the creature of habit. And the ego is addicted to its habits, even the painful ones, because the pain of the familiar is always preferable to the terror of the unknown. Every time you choose the easy scroll over the difficult focus, you are not just wasting time. You are casting a vote. You are telling the deep structures of your mind, this is who we are. We are the person who avoids. Repeat that vote enough times, and it hardens into an archetype, a pattern of behavior that feels like instinct. You stop believing you are someone who procrastinates, and you simply become the procrastination. Jung called these patterns the reactive archetypes, the old programs that run automatically when we are faced with the threat of growth. A person who lives in perpetual chaos is not someone who lacks a planner. They are someone being driven by an unconscious program that was written long ago in response to an old wound. The program whispers, if you are messy, no one can expect too much from you. If you are scattered, you can't be held responsible for your own potential. The chaos is not the problem. It is the solution to a problem you forgot you had. And when you see it for what it is, a shield, not a flaw, you can finally stop fighting the symptoms and start addressing the cause. You can stop trying to organize your desk and start asking why you need the desk to be a mess in the first place. Chapter 2. The Vacant Center. So, if chaos is a structure, what is it built around? It is built around a void. It is built around the absence of a solid, grounded self. We look at someone who is disorganized, and we assume they need better systems. But systems are useless if the person operating them doesn't know who they are or where they are going. You can give the most sophisticated GPS to a ship that has no destination, and it will simply drift in circles, generating error messages. Jung spoke of the identity crisis as the root of all neurosis. When the I that is supposed to be making decisions is itself a question mark, every action becomes a random act. You are not making choices, you are reacting to stimuli. You are a pinball, bouncing from one external demand to the next, wondering why you feel so drained at the end of the day. You have a schedule full of appointments, but an empty soul. You are busy, but you are not living. Where does this vacant center come from? It comes from living a life that was assigned to you, rather than chosen by you. From a young age, we are handed a script. Be a good student. Get a stable job. Please your parents. Impress your peers. We wear these masks, these personas, for so long that we forget there is a face underneath. We become the successful professional, the caring partner, the funny friend. But if you scratch the surface, if you ask, yes, but who am I when no one is watching? The answer is often silence. This is the identity crisis of the modern age. It is particularly acute for generations raised on the curated perfection of social media. You are expected to have your life together by 25. You are supposed to have a brand, a side hustle, a perfect relationship. But inside, you are a collage of other people's expectations. One part of you wants to paint. Another part tells you to be practical. One part craves solitude. Another fears being left out. This internal parliament is in constant chaotic session, passing no laws, making no progress. And the result is a life that looks productive from the outside, but feels hollow from within. When you don't know what you value, everything seems urgent. The email feels like an emergency. The notification feels like a demand. You have no internal compass, so you let the loudest voice in the room, or on the screen, steer your ship. This is the root of that specific modern anxiety, the fear of missing out. You commit to one path, and immediately you are haunted by the road not taken. You start a project, and you are paralyzed by the thought of a better project you could be doing. This constant state of divided attention shatters any possibility of deep work or deep living. You are everywhere and nowhere at once. Jung believed that identity is not something you find lying around, like a lost key. It is something you build, brick by brick, through the agony of choice and the courage of commitment. It requires you to kill off the versions of yourself that you have outgrown. It requires you to disappoint people who only love the mask you used to wear. It requires you to sit in the discomfort of not knowing, and to keep moving anyway. Until you do that work, your life will remain a makeshift structure, held together by the tape of other people's approval, and the hope that tomorrow will be different. And that structure, my friend, is what we call disorganization. Ask yourself this: if your life were a book, and you had to write the title right now, what would it be? Not the title you want it to be one day, but the title that fits the current chapter. If that title feels vague, or borrowed, or empty, then you have found the source of the clutter. You are trying to arrange furniture in a house that hasn't been built yet. Chapter 3. The Art of Subtraction. We have been sold a lie about organization. We have been told it is about doing more, about optimizing, about hacking our way to peak efficiency. We buy the planners, we download the apps, we attend the seminars, all in the hope that we can cram just one more task into the already bursting container of our day. But Jung saw the path to wholeness as a process of subtraction, not addition. Individuation, the journey to become oneself, is not about putting more on. It is about taking the false layers off. Organizing your life, therefore, cannot begin with the question, "What should I do?" It must begin with the far more terrifying question, "What must I abandon?" Because you are not disorganized because you are missing a system. You are disorganized because you are carrying a dead weight that is not yours to carry. You are a porter staggering under a load of commitments, goals, and relationships that belong to the person you used to be, or the person you thought you should be. The first thing to drop is the reflex of yes. We say yes to lunch with people we don't enjoy. We say yes to projects that drain us. We say yes to favors that cost us our peace. We do this out of a fear of being disliked, a fear of seeming ungrateful, a fear of the awkward silence that follows a refusal. But every one of these automatic yeses is a small betrayal of the self. They are bricks in the wall of chaos. Jung called this living by the persona, selling your soul for a little bit of social approval. To organize your life, you must cultivate the sacred art of the no. A no that is clear, calm, and final. It is not rude. It is honest. And honesty is the foundation of all order. The second burden to release is the borrowed dream. Whose life are you living? Whose goals are you chasing? Perhaps you are climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall. Perhaps you are striving for a title, a salary, a status that your heart has never desired. You chase it because you said you would, because your family expects it, because your friends are doing it. But a goal that is not rooted in your own soil will never bear fruit. It will just take up space. It will create the sensation of effort without the satisfaction of progress. Letting go of a wrong goal feels like death. It feels like failure. But it is not. It is the pruning of a dead branch so the rest of the tree can live. It is the return of stolen energy to the rightful owner, you. Jung said that the gold is in the dark. The gold is in the parts of yourself you abandoned to pursue those borrowed dreams. When you drop the false goal, you don't lose anything. You make room for the real one to finally emerge. Then there are the relationships that have expired. Some people enter your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. The tragedy is when we try to force a seasonal friend into a lifetime contract. You feel it in your gut. After spending time with certain people, you feel smaller, heavier, more anxious. They are not bad people. They are just the wrong people for the person you are becoming. But you hold on, out of loyalty, out of fear of being alone, out of the memory of who they used to be to you. This clinging is a tremendous source of entropy. It keeps you tethered to an old frequency, making it impossible to tune into a new one. You must also release the image of your old self. This is the hardest subtraction of all. You have spent years building an identity. You are the reliable one, the struggling artist, the overworked martyr. These identities are comfortable. They explain your life to you. But if you want to change your life, you must be willing to let the old character die. You cannot build a new house while you are still living in the old one. You have to move out. You have to let the old self starve for attention, while you feed the new self with small, consistent actions. And finally, you must let go of the noise, the constant mental static of comparison, of worry, of self-doubt. This noise is not harmless background radiation. It is a parasite. It feeds on your attention and convinces you that you are not enough. It drives you to fill your life with distractions just to prove your own worth. But a life organized around proving your worth is a life that will never be at rest. You have to quiet the noise to hear the signal. You have to create inner silence so you can finally hear what you actually want. Jung once remarked that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Letting go feels like annihilation, but it is not. It is the clearing of the ground. It is the removal of the rubble so that a foundation can be laid. When you subtract what is false, what remains is not nothing. What remains is everything that matters. And when that core is clear, the structure of your life will organize itself around it, naturally, without force. The question is not how to fit more in. The question is, what are you brave enough to leave out? Chapter 4. The Divided Self. We have all felt it. The gap between the person we claim to be and the person we actually are. We say we value health, but we choose the extra hour of sleep over the morning run. We say we value connection, but we stare at our phones when we are with the people we love. We say we want to write a book, build a business, learn a skill, but we spend our evenings in a numb scroll through content we won't remember in the morning. This is not hypocrisy. This is not a lack of willpower. This is the signature of a divided soul. Jung saw this not as a minor inconsistency, but as a fundamental split in the psyche. It is as if you are two people living in one body. One person, the ego, dreams of a future self, disciplined, calm, creative. The other person, driven by unconscious fears and old patterns, is perfectly content with the current self, comfortable, safe, unseen. These two people are in a constant, silent war. And because the unconscious self has the home field advantage, it controls your habits, your impulses, your reflexes, it almost always wins. Think of it like a river that is split into two streams. One stream, the conscious intention, wants to flow north towards the sea of your potential. But the other stream, the unconscious habit, flows south towards the familiar swamp of your past. You cannot steer the river by shouting at the water. You can only change its course by digging a new channel, one small shovelful of earth at a time. Until you do that, your life energy is divided. Half of it flows towards your stated goals, and half of it flows away, leaving you feeling stuck, tired, and frustrated. This division shows up in 1,000 small ways. You say you want a minimalist, simple life, yet you spend hours shopping online for things you don't need. You say you want deep, authentic love, yet you keep choosing partners who are emotionally unavailable. You say you want freedom, yet you stay in a job that chains you to a desk. The contradiction isn't a mystery, it is a message. It is your unconscious telling you, in the only language it knows, the language of your actions, what it truly values. And it values safety over freedom. It values the known over the unknown. It values the pain of the devil it knows over the uncertainty of the devil it doesn't. Jung described this as the state of being grafted with two incompatible branches. One branch reaches for the sun, the other is pulled toward the shade. When two opposing forces pull against each other, the tree does not grow. It doesn't die, but it lives a half-life, stunted and twisted. Your disorganization is the visible symptom of that internal twist. It is the consequence of trying to sail in two directions at once. The cure for this division is not more effort, it is more honesty. You must sit down with yourself and ask the hard questions, not the rationalizing questions, but the deep ones. Do I really want this, or do I just think I should want this? Am I avoiding that task because I'm tired, or because I'm terrified of what it represents? Is this goal mine, or was it handed to me? When you answer these questions with brutal honesty, you begin to integrate the split. You begin to align the conscious intention with the unconscious drive. You stop fighting yourself, and you start becoming yourself. When words and actions finally match, something remarkable happens. Organization ceases to be a chore. It becomes a natural expression of who you are. You don't have to force yourself to write, because you are a writer. You don't have to force yourself to exercise, because you are someone who moves. The discipline is no longer external. It has become internal. It has become you. And when the soul is no longer divided, the life it builds will be whole. Chapter 5. The weight of a single choice. We wait for the big moment. The epiphany. The life-changing event that will flip a switch and turn us into the person we want to be. We wait for Monday, or the first of the month, or New Year's Day. We wait for inspiration to strike like lightning. But Jung understood that the self is not built in earthquakes. It is built in the tiny, almost invisible tremors of daily life. It is built in the microscopic decisions you make when no one is watching. Every choice you make is a vote. Not for a candidate, but for an identity. You are standing in a voting booth thousands of times a day, casting ballots for the person you are becoming. When you hit the snooze button, you are voting for the person who is late, rushed, and reactive. When you pick up your phone first thing in the morning, you are voting for the person whose attention is owned by others. When you choose the distraction over the focus, you are voting for the person who stays small. Conversely, when you choose to sit in silence for 2 minutes before the chaos begins, you are voting for the person who is centered. When you write one sentence of that book you are scared to write, you are voting for the author. When you have the difficult conversation you have been avoiding, you are voting for the person who is brave. These votes seem insignificant in isolation. They seem too small to matter. But they accumulate. They form a pattern. And the pattern becomes a habit. And the habit becomes a character. And the character becomes a destiny. Jung said that people become what they repeat, not what they imagine. You can imagine yourself as a great painter for 20 years. But if you never pick up a brush, the imagination is just a fantasy. The reality is built by the brush in your hand, by the canvas you face, by the imperfect strokes you make day after day. The future does not arrive from your dreams. It arrives from the structure of your actions. Consider the first hour of your day. It is not just a time of day. It is a prophecy. It is the opening scene of the movie of your life. If you spend that hour reacting, checking emails, scrolling social media, responding to other people's emergencies. You are setting the tone for a life that is reactive, scattered, and controlled by external forces. You are voting for a future where you are the passenger, not the pilot. But if you spend that hour in a purposeful way, reading, writing, moving, thinking, you are voting for a future where you are the author. You are casting the first and most important vote of the day for the person you want to be. There is a psychological phenomenon known as the identity effect. When you act in alignment with a value, your brain updates your self-image to match the action. If you run for 10 minutes every morning, your brain eventually concludes, I am a runner. You don't run because you are a runner. You are a runner because you run. The action precedes the identity. This is the secret that the chaos-worshipping part of you doesn't want you to know. You don't need a massive transformation. You just need to cast one small vote today, and then another one tomorrow. Ask yourself this question, and be honest. If a camera had been following you for the last 24 hours, with no sound, just capturing your actions, what would the footage suggest about the person you are becoming? Would it show someone moving towards their goals, or someone drifting in circles? Would it show someone who knows what they want, or someone who is just filling time? The footage doesn't lie. The footage is the truth. And the beautiful, terrifying thing is that you can change the footage, starting right now. You can cast a different vote in the next 5 minutes, and that vote, however small, is the first step towards a new identity. It is the first brick in the new structure of your life. Chapter 6. The Mirror with No Mercy. There comes a point in this journey where the metaphors must stop and the looking must begin. A point where you have to stand in front of a mirror and refuse to look away. This is the turning point. Jung called it the confrontation with the shadow. It is the moment you stop explaining your life to yourself and start seeing it as it is. The first question you must ask the mirror is the simplest and most evaded. Where does my time actually go? Not where I think it goes, or where I tell people it goes, but where the minutes and hours truly leak away. Look at the data of your life. Look at your screen time report. Look at your calendar. Look at the gap between when you said you would start something and when you actually did. This is not about guilt. This is about clarity. You cannot fix a leak you refuse to see. The second question is more uncomfortable. What is draining me, and what is feeding me? We spend so much of our lives in a state of low-grade exhaustion, assuming it's normal. We assume that adulthood is just being tired, but the exhaustion is not normal. It is a signal. It is your soul telling you that you are spending too much time in environments, conversations, and activities that are toxic to you. There are people who leave you feeling lighter, clearer, more alive. And there are people who leave you feeling heavy, confused, and depleted. There are tasks that give you energy, and tasks that steal it. Look at your life and name them. Name the vampires, and name the nurturers. The third question is the one we avoid most fiercely. What am I holding on to? Simply because I have held it for too long. This is the sunk cost fallacy of the soul. You stay in a job you hate because you've been there for 5 years. You stay in a relationship that is over because you've invested so much time. You cling to an old identity because the thought of starting over is terrifying. Jung called this the illusion of continuity. We mistake endurance for virtue. We mistake the comfort of the familiar for the safety of the good. But a withered branch does not become green again just because you refuse to cut it off. It just prevents new growth. This ruthless honesty is not an act of self-flagellation. It is an act of liberation. It is the cutting of the ropes that have been holding you back. Because until you see the truth, that you are not a victim of time, but a poor steward of it, that you are not lacking energy, but spending it on the wrong things, that you are not stuck, but afraid to move, you will keep waiting for a rescue that will never come. The turning point happens when you stop blaming the world for the state of your room. When you stop blaming your boss for your exhaustion. When you stop blaming your past for your present. It happens when you look in the mirror and you say, I see you. I see the fear. I see the avoidance. I see the chaos you built to hide. And I am ready to build something else. And in that moment of seeing, something shifts. The weight doesn't disappear, but it becomes yours to carry, which means it becomes yours to put down. The confusion doesn't vanish, but it becomes a question, which means it can be answered. You know where you stand. And when you know where you stand, you can finally choose a direction. Chapter 7. The Shape of a Life Restored. So, after all of this excavation, after the subtraction, the honesty, the voting, what does it look like? What is the shape of a life that has been truly organized? From the inside out. It is not what the magazines show you. It is not a pristine white desk with a single succulent and a color-coded planner. It is not waking up at 4 a.m. to cold plunge and journal for 2 hours. Those are just costumes. They are forms without essence. An organized life is first and foremost an aligned life. It is a life where your values, your actions, and your goals are pointing in the same direction. Jung would call this the state of individuation, the state of being undivided. In this state, you don't need to force yourself to work, because your work is an expression of who you are. You don't need to remind yourself to be kind, because kindness is woven into your nature. You don't need a complicated system to manage your time, because you are naturally drawn to do what matters, and you naturally avoid what doesn't. In this state, your life has a center of gravity. It is not easily knocked off balance by a difficult email or a change in plans. You are not living in a state of constant reaction. You have built a filter. Before you agree to something, you check it against your values. Does this align with who I am and where I am going? If the answer is no, the answer is no. It doesn't matter how good the opportunity looks, or how much pressure you feel. The no is calm, clear, and final. This is not rigidity. This is integrity. An organized life is also a life with margins. It is not a schedule crammed to the brim. It is a schedule with empty spaces. Empty spaces for rest, for spontaneity, for thinking, for being. We fear the empty space. We think it means we are lazy or unproductive. But the empty space is where life happens. It is where you have the conversation that changes everything. It is where the idea you have been chasing finally lands. It is where you catch your breath and remember why you are doing any of this in the first place. A life without margins is a life that will eventually suffocate. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. Notice he didn't say the privilege is becoming rich, or famous, or successful by the world's standards. He said it is becoming yourself. Because that is the hardest, most rebellious, most rewarding task there is. The world wants you to be a copy of a copy. It wants you to fit into its prefabricated boxes. But the call of the soul is to be original, to be authentic, to be one of a kind. The truly organized life, then, is not a life of perfect order. It is a life of perfect honesty. It is a life where you have stopped pretending to be someone else. It is a life where you have cleared away enough clutter, external and internal, that the unique shape of your own soul can finally be seen. It might look simple to others. It might look ordinary. But to you, it will feel like home. It will feel like the peace that passes understanding. The peace that comes not from having everything under control, but from having everything in its rightful place, including yourself. You are not here to become an optimized version of someone else's ideal. You are here to become the most honest version of yourself. And that journey does not begin with a new system. It begins with a single question, asked in the silence of your own heart. If I stopped running, stopped hiding, stopped filling my life with noise, Who would I finally have to meet? The answer to that question is the life you are meant to organize. Not the life you have been assigned, but the life that has been waiting for you, patiently, behind the wall of chaos, all along.